Cool. All right, so the big update for this meeting is that I have started co-organizing ByteConf Flutter 2020. If you're not familiar with ByteConf, it was started by a developer named Christian Freeman like 2 years ago. The first one was ByteConf React 2018. And then he's kind of been scaling out and doing multiple virtual conferences. So I think last year he did a React Native one, React and a GraphQL one. This year, ByteConf React was just, I think, 2 weeks ago. And we've already gotten contacts from the Flutter community group, and then also contacts from the Flutter developer relations group. We have a meeting, I think, with both of them next week to sort of talk about organizing what the talks would look like, what potential speakers are. The CFP will be open in July, and the tentative date that we set the conference for is in August. So that's a pretty big deal. I'm excited about it. And then let's see, we don't have a like guest speaker today, but next meetup we'll have Arjul Beharano. I don't want to butcher his name. I think that's how you say it. But he will be joining us to talk about working asynchronously with Flutter. Basically, just talking about how you can work with your UI and your backend and sort of build a nice flow of your data throughout your application. So those are the two big updates for this meeting. And now I'll kick it off to whoever wants to present.
Sounds good. Yeah, I can kick it off. I am getting some kind of reverb from somebody. So I don't know if we can.
Yeah, if everybody wants to mute their microphone, and then we'll just let Carl speak.
That might help. Then I can, let's see, present now. Make sure. Entire screen. Okay. Let's see. Ooh, yeah, it's quiet now. It's awesome. But feel free, if you have any questions or anything, always feel free to jump in. So I've kind of been working on this just general, like getting used to working with Flutter and Firebase. And so really with any new app that you're creating, you always kind of want to have some like data or material to play around with. So I'm lucky because I have an uncle who is a PHP developer, and he has this website called Illos, and it's for like illustrators. And he has like a shuffle page, and like illustrators pay to basically be on this page. But what I had him do was I had him set up an API for me, and basically whenever you query this API, it returns back JSON for an author, URL, and an ID. And I had thought the ID was for the URL for the picture. So basically, like for example, if I grab like this link, drop it in here, like, oh look, there you go. But basically, it's querying from his. What I did was I basically used that to create a future. And Ryan, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on any of this terminology and stuff. But basically, future illustration, which gets a HTTP. You have to use this HTTP package to grab it, and then basically from there, it puts it up on the screen. And here, let me see. Let's see. So this is really like a page that you can't see right now. But the idea was that, you know, it would be cool if users would be able to go on there and like look at pictures and save pictures that they like. So we set up auth. Let's just do Joe at joe.com. Joe. Cool, and then register, and it takes you to basically from main Dart, because I guess my app, like the main app's running from here from main Dart, and the home page is login page, and then goes to this stroll page that I was just showing. But what it does is it grabs it and then it displays it in this scaffold with the app bar. And I added this thing called, there's a widget called drawer, is that what you want to call it? So I got a drawer here that goes to stroll page or favorites. And I think the drawer, you got to put what you want in the drawer somewhere. Let's see. But then you have the list tile, which is, let's see. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, this is what's in the drawer. Sorry, I was getting confused for a second. So in this drawer, I have a stroll and favorites, and then the stroll page will take you to the stroll page through this navigator, which is what we're already on right now. Or you go to favorites, or back to stroll. But basically, the body of it is a list view. It has a child widget that I wrapped in a gesture detector. It's so cool because like there's all these like things that Flutter has available to you that you're just like, oh, this is what you need. Hold on. But basically, it has a list view, and then it basically displays this cached network image. And this cached network image is like it's pretty cool because it allows you to grab basically from an URL and display pictures. So you just grab this image and then like loads into your app. So that's how I display that. But whenever you press it, it sets the state and fetches a new illustration. So if I click here, you can basically stroll through pictures because every time I click it, it does a fetch illustration, set state, and then it sets all this back off again. But then at the bottom, we added this floating action button to basically add a favorite. So to say if I like this one, click here, and what happens is it also, let me know. I'm trying to keep this like within 20 minutes tops. So let me know if I'm going over. But basically what this does is it creates a Firestore instance. So basically I have this app I just called it Shibby. And actually all of my, this isn't the way to do it, but all of my Firebase stuff goes here. But we have users. Nope, there he is. I think that's Joe. So Joe, in the tutorial, I used like when I first started off, the illustrations were called tasks, or the document. Yep, the document was called a task, so it's still called that. So I probably need to rename that. But if you see here, it now added the author John Hershey, and in this URL. So there you go. That's the one that we liked. But basically, it adds it for the current user. So basically, you kind of have to put it in the same format as how you have this set up. But now when I go to the favorites, or let's add another one real quick. And it's interesting because I downloaded this on my phone. Oh, well, definitely can. I downloaded this on my phone, and it's a lot quicker on my phone. So I think like the emulator, I don't know, I guess it has to do a virtualization or something, makes it slower. So now when you go to favorites, you can check out all the favorites here on the favorites page. And basically the favorites page, creates a state, build body, added the drawer like straight into the favorites page. But basically it builds yeah, it creates a snapshot and builds this list from the snapshot. So yeah, pretty cool. I don't know. It's going to be a whole different like ball game of actually trying to like publish it to the App Store and doing all that, because I've never done that. But it's still pretty cool what you can create from just a basic JSON API. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If anybody has any questions.
I had a question.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, do you plan to eventually allow like users to order prints or anything like that?
So basically for the website itself is more for like discovering illustrators. It's basically if you're like like a lot of these people are in like magazines and things like that, so it's more about people kind of like showing their collection, and people that need an illustration for an article or something like that will then hire them like based on that. But yeah, that's a good idea actually.
Yeah, I could see that as a use case, or just like you had mentioned, this kind of is like a portfolio for like artists. So I could see like you providing more info than just the artist's name, like providing like a URL to their website so that you could see more of their portfolio or contact information, things of that nature.
That, or if they have
Yeah.
other images that are on the site that can be queried
Hmm.
based on that. That would also be really good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. If you could, click on, because basically on the website you can go and you click on the author and see all the whole portfolio of that author.
Yeah, that would be the next step to me is like not just being able to favorite a picture, but also being able to favorite an artist and then be able to
Yeah.
like see all of their
Yeah.
content.
I'll just have them. Yeah, I'll just have them drop me a giant JSON, query, and just throw it up there in a list view. It's perfect. Or like a grid tile. But anyways,
Hey, Call. It's nice, man. I believe for the favorites you are using the future builder, right, to show the information.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I think so. I'd have to.
okay,
I can.
that
I can
yeah.
search.
I'm coming from a Swift world. I just started Flutter, so maybe it is the case here. So when you move off the screen, will that future request be there, or it will be cancelled, and then they will show the information again when you go back, or do we have any process of
Uh,
canceling the URL request when you move off that specific? Of course, right now only we
Yeah,
are
so I
seeing what we know.
can
yeah.
I can kind of speak to that. So if you have a future builder tied to a page and you leave that page while the future is executing, then it'll cancel. Basically, future builder and stream builder work the same way in that
Okay,
like you don't have to handle the dispose yourself. Like they're handled for you. The flip side of that is like every time you hit that page, like say you
Yeah.
wanted to load an individual item, then every time you hit that page, it'll reload and there's no caching going on there.
okay,
So in those
Right. So
cases where you would want to cache that thing, you would probably want to use some like a future provider or something like that.
okay.
yeah. So for example, I don't know if you can see my screen.
Yes, I
But for
can.
example, so if I go to like if I'm on the stroll page, so like here's the stroll one. But if I go to to this drawer and then hit stroll, it's gonna like kick this thing off again. You know what I mean?
Correct. My question was on the favorite. Suppose I think you have stored say
Oh
100 or
yeah, oh the
200
favorites
images.
page.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so the
now,
favorites it uses a no, I don't think it let me see.
yeah, you're
Yes,
using the
return
stream builder.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a
return
future builder.
future builder.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's one of
And
the
Firebase, it's like a async snapshot with the Firebase
Okay.
user. So I guess it's like I guess this Firebase user is um like a specific function. Like it's represents like a special thing, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know, Ryan. I don't know if you can explain this in more detail. And I just know it kind of.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I think.
yeah,
I got the answer that I need. Thanks, Ryan.
No, I mean I'm interested too. But basically, it just streams this Firestore instance with the snap of the user ID.
you probably could pull the user authentication out of the favorites page if you wanted a little bit higher level in the app after login.
Yeah.
So there's a few ways that you can approach that. One is where you have and call it whatever you want, but it's either a service or it's you can call it a controller if you want, if you like the MVC model view controller path. But essentially, if you have something that's a little bit lower level that allows you to keep the state of the logged in user, that will allow you to, if you're logged out, you can route back into the login screen. And if you're logged in, then it can just call that service and just say, hey, get the user's ID, and then kind of work from there. Because if you look, some of your stuff, you've got like your data model within the same within the same Dart file as the page that's relevant to it, which is fine. There's different ways that you can do that approach, but
Yeah.
using a
For sure.
common service, I think, would be helpful.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I also don't know how to like log out, but
Yeah.
I'll work on that. It's
get
still
No,
still
it's really
in
good.
production.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you shared that.
It's just I mean it's just like nice having like a win. You know, like every win's awesome. And the other thing is like I'm also getting more. Yeah, I can probably stop sharing, but you know the other thing is you start getting more used to the different widgets and like what you have available to you. And I think that's really awesome because you know when you've been doing it, you know the more like repetitions you get and the more you learn about this kind of stuff, the easier it is.
Agreed. I'm gonna, I think, share my screen, and hopefully you will see what I see. Do you see my screen?
We see it. It looks good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, feel free to jump in and ask questions and do whatever you want in this. This is kind of like, I mean, I can do some live coding on this if you'd like, or we can just kind of keep it like a meta discussion of the 4-hour live coding that we did yesterday, quite literally yesterday. Just to give you a bit of background, there is a conference that is virtual that is happening right now that would have been in Seattle, but now is virtual. That I had presented in Atlanta 1 year ago. I actually made, in 2 hours, I made the conference's app, which was pretty cool. I didn't make the whole thing. So this is the app for the conference itself. And this is what I made. So I didn't keep the advertisements, and I just kept this as something that was very simple. And I used the out-of-the-box icons. But that was a lot of fun. And we had thought about, whenever we were presenting it this time around, were we going to actually finish the app for the conference, or did we want to do something that was a little more contextually relevant? And so this had actually built from some of the Flutter work that Eric and I had done in the hackathon, but completely forked from that and in a different way. You know, I was trying to think of how could I teach this to a wider audience quickly. And so we made a symptom tracker that allows you to, so we made this check-in screen, we set up navigation, and we allowed people to, you know, like click through and do stuff like that. There is also something called FHIR in healthcare, just so that you know. It's called Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. And you were showing JSON, Carl. This is JSON to an extreme. Like if you look through, you know, this is how you can make the resources that are in healthcare into a very, very, very large JSON structure, so that you can get, like, you know, the patient's name or a medication or a vital sign or things like that. And one of the common things for these conferences, specifically for clinical informaticians, is we love making puns on FHIR. So we had to have some FHIR puns in this too. And so I think those were the biggest two things that we had. This symptom tracker is up on GitHub, by the way. And we had set this up with, because there were 6 of us, and each of us were at varying levels of background and skill for Flutter development, many of them being newer. The question was, how can we do this in a manner that each person can try and build off of the next person without them getting stuck? And the solution that we had around that was doing branches. And so we actually have a different branch for, you know, the initial commit, for when we're going to talk about widgets. And then by the time the widgets are done, where we talk about the various screens and navigation, and then, you actually can see each of those commits from the prior one. And one person would start at 1 and kind of slowly work to way to build up towards demo/2. So I'm going to do some of the things that we did that were there just because this is fun. This is going to be the first one. We have a collaboration session. And I don't know if you have done this in VS Code, but if you put the extension live share, put that on your on VS Code, and I'm going to send you the link here. And if you do that, you should be able to join my session where I have everything shared out right now. And you should also be able to edit some of the text that's here, which was a lot of fun because we had a sandbox that if you look on Android, come on Android, and if you check on iOS, there we go. Here's our sandbox. And all of these FHIR puns were created during the 4-hour conference. So people would edit in their next text widget that was center aligned and make whatever FHIR pun that they wanted. Did you all see where the link is to actually join? I think if you do that and you link it to your GitHub, then I can actually, you can go directly into this and see it from there, which is pretty cool. Yeah, there you are. Hey, Mark. So what you should see is just to give you a little bit, because if you're doing something similar, I'll give you kind of like what we learned. So Mark is here. If I click on this circle, I can see what he sees, and I will follow him around. If I deselect that circle, I can then move to wherever I want. Same for him. So I think he defaults to following me around, and that's fine. But if he wants to go to different parts or things like that, he just has to deselect the circle. Mark?
That's awesome.
Yeah, make us a FHIR pun over here. So go over here and just like copy this and
just add one to it.
Add one
Okay.
to it. Yeah.
Wait.
Scroll to the bottom because you're on the bottom. Yeah, and then finish your parentheses or whatever, your quote, your single quote. Yeah, and now hit save, Mark.
Okay. Yeah.
When you hit save,
did it show it?
You actually are making the changes to both my Android and my iPhone that are debug sessions.
Yeah, I see it say reloaded 7 at 899 libraries. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So you can set something up that allows multiple people to edit this at the same time, which is really, really, really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah. I really enjoyed doing this. And one thing that I will say, with great power, when you get like 5 people all trying to edit text at the same time, it gets a little bit chaotic. So there was some benefit to having backup branches so that even though somebody was messing around with one thing, if we needed to, we basically had a backup. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, you could at least bounce back.
Yeah. Carl, you can hit save and it should update that for the bottom of the list view. And I can hit save. Any one of us actually could hit save and it'll make the changes. By the way. Yeah, so there it is. There's your FHIR pun.
That's awesome.
FHIR in the house. There it is. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna kind of give you like a quick run view of like some of how we had set up these branches. So I'm actually gonna. I'm sorry. I'm gonna delete these FHIR puns. Discard those changes so that I can switch branches. So I'm just going to show you the initial commit. And because it's going to run Flutter pub-get, I think I probably have to do a hot restart on both. So I'm just going to do that preemptively. And this way you'll be able to see kind of like how the app had started and then kind of what we had worked our way into without me just doing much of anything. So it started with a single main file that has a material app and a center widget with text that's at bare bones. That's it. I like doing that without any of the scaffold because I think it's a nice visual representation of the stuff that you can do, of where you can build from. And by the time we have worked our way up to widgets, let's see if widgets will load. We had a little bit of theme data that were added to this and a scaffold. And this text is incredibly difficult to read. So we had actually imported a theme that I had that was a little bit updated. So by the time we get up to this one, you should be able to see the theme. Oh no, I have to refresh this. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Git. I know Ryan is not the biggest fan of Git right now, but I like it. I think it's good for early beginners. I think there's a lot of promise with this. So now here's our theme that we had that was extracted into here. So just to kind of walk you through this part, we had set up our colors or whatever that we wanted here. We'd set up the various button themes, app bar, and icon themes. And then when it came to the text theme, whatever you're using now, it used to be display 1 or display 3, display 2, display 1, whatever. But that's changed with the newest version of Flutter when it switched to 1.17, which was like last week. So we had set this up in the manner that's the newer version of Material Designs, and basically any of the web stuff that you're seeing. So H1, H2, H3, whatever. And understanding that this is future-proofed, or if you have an app that is also a website, you want to be able to set whatever version of these that you want to without it being too difficult. So that was kind of the way that we had set up our theme. We used a package called Git, and we used it for 3 reasons. And I'll just show you this. If you're looking at the stuff that you have to do for a default new page, you have to do navigator of context, push, and then material page route, and then you pass context forward to whatever the name of the application you want. That's a lot of boilerplate. And this is what it defines it. It makes it easier. It's used in 3 ways. One is for getting rid of that really annoying means of having to pass context everywhere throughout your application whenever you're just trying to get from one screen to the next. And it can be with named routes. You can do that otherwise as well. The other is whenever you're doing a snack bar or dialogue or bottom sheet, it's a huge pain to pass context out of there as well. And so their version of navigation is just get to and then whatever the name the screen is. And instead of navigator.pop, it's get back. If you're going navigator I think pop all until or something like that, it's get off all. That's it. And when you're thinking about like how you actually create a snack bar or how you create a dialogue, you literally just have to say that and just whatever text you want in there. That was really, 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 really useful. And that was one of the reasons why I got, I started looking into this single package more, especially for a live coding session where we were trying to teach people how to do stuff. So if you looked at I'm just going to skip over to the next version. Now we're moving our way up in this live coding session. Let's see. Fresh. While this is syncing, the next thing we had used was we had set up Git so that we could actually have a button that when you press the button, it shows up a little snack bar that says you clicked the button. And that was all in this home screen. It's a drawer with a raised button, and on pressed, this is all you have to do to make a snack bar. And to get this drawer to close, it just says get.back. That's it. So no passing context, no having to mess with any of that stuff. If you extract this out into like a shared widget, then it works just as easily. And the example for that one is an action. So for example, if I went to this screen and in this app bar, which is this app bar is the same as the one for the check-in screen, is the same as the one for the home screen. It passes that action forward, and all it has to do is when I press the X that's here, it doesn't matter where I am in the application, it would just do get off all and go back. So it would go immediately or all the way back to the home screen. That was really, really, really helpful. It just made our application a lot less verbose, and that was pretty fun.
That's real understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I had a question. I noticed on my screen, my live share under debug mode, I see like logging for where the routes are going. Is that just something that the Git package does?
Yeah, that it does that. It tells you where it's routing in default in debug mode. That's part of the package. That's correct.
That's handy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really handy.
Yeah, we really, I find it was helpful to try and teach this with this specifically, right? And we were trying to make it so that we had as little boilerplate as possible. I didn't think that we could go over like block or anything that was ridiculous in terms of state management. And even still, I think we kind of hit our limit in our 4-hour time period. But using those branches and doing something with as simple as packages, like 2 very simple packages, allowed us to try and build in the direction that one person had. This is the thing I'm going to try and cover. Understanding that live coding is more like an improv than it is like a rigid. You have a general direction that you're kind of heading, and if you don't get there exactly, or you go a slightly different way, it's fine. So having those branches really helped us a lot, so that we weren't entirely dependent on the works of the person that was before us. Does that make sense? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean you're tailoring it towards getting to the meat of the training. That's what matters.
Yeah, we did use this for state, and that was the last hour of our presentation. Was you can see kind of how these things are slowly getting built, and feel free to look at these on your own time as well, or I can kind of give you the architecture that I like, which is the screen, services, and shared. But shared is essentially these reusable widgets that are in multiple locations. So for example, this button is here, it's here, and then it's also on, it shows up on the check-in screen. And so we just extracted that out into one thing, and that was it. Here's the wireframe. So you can see the button that's right there as well. And that was pretty helpful. Yeah, really, I think by this time he had the dashboard, I think is what, yeah. And the check-in, when you click that button, it navigates back over to the same as this one. So it actually will navigate to this version of this as compared to just clicking here. And these were just basically list tiles. And then by the time we had finished the end of the live coding part of the session. So, we had some that were just talking about it. We had some that were we were showing you what are the widgets, how do you find them, look up, this is how you look this stuff up in pub. Or in flutter.dev or in pub.dev. And then the services that we implemented, here was so we're specifically just for this one check-in screen. So you have a symptom, you've got the name of it, you have whether or not it's checked, and then you have the icon. And kind of future-proofing it, even though we didn't really need it, we used an enum so that it would be easier to figure out which one was which down the road if you were using this rather than having to do a search by string name or something like that. So the symptom data model was called in this service. And this was the other thing that, if you do MobX, use MobX. If you're using Block, use Block. We use their version of a state manager. And I'll just kind of click down, maybe just scroll down to that. And, pick one. It doesn't matter which thing you're using. I thought this was pretty cool. So if you are, here it is. So they call them controllers, and it's all the same as far as I'm concerned. I think even this screen services shared follows the idea of it's pretty much a model view and controller MVC method or architecture. It's just the shared and the screens are both your views, and pretty much everything that's inside here is, this is where your data model is, a service. You can use the service in whatever screen or thing you want, or if you have a manager, that's what helps with multiple services. That was kind of the way that we did this, and they all have S's, so that's fun. Anyways, we had a service that extended their Git controller. And if you're putting this all throughout your application, you can use this idea of, this is the same idea as get it. We're using a single instance and you find it. But if you don't need it in a whole bunch of places, don't bother doing that. You don't need to call this if you're not doing that, and you can just use a Git builder. And this is the same idea as with provider, provider of context or things like that. So you call this with controller on the first time you're running it, that service or controller, you initialize it, that's it. And then later down in your widget tree, in this builder, you would call and you can name this whatever you want, but this is an instance of whatever your controller is. And so you can just name that dot and it'll get to all the functions that we have in here. So I have, or methods that you have in here. So I have toggle checked and I have symptom list are the only two that we have in this one. And if you go over to our check-in screen, within the body, it's got, let me just show you this so you can see it. This is the header, the very top, and yeah, you can use spacers and you can do other ways just to make it so that these are all the same. This was just what we did quickly. You've got that shared action button at the bottom, which tells you exactly this, check in complete, check in tomorrow as well. And then here we had this symptom list, which called get builder. And within that, here it's of type symptom service, just because that's what I named this service. It initializes it that one and only time. And then within the builder, you can name it whatever you want, but we named it just data because that was all I was using this for. And it used that to then find the symptom list and then mapped each of those here. And then it, every single one of these items was right here. It's got a row with the icon on the left, the text in the middle, which we used expanded so that, if you didn't have expanded, it would try and keep it all at one line, by the way. So if I removed this widget as an example, it's going to squish everything together. So that was really a nice, useful use of expanded. And then it had the checkbox. And this whole time, you think about here we're calling get, here, 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 here. Just imagine how many times you would have to be passing context and calling context just to get your theme data, just to figure out which of these colors you're using. Let alone the text theme, or all those. As I've been messing around with this, and as we were messing around with this, I have grown to hate passing context forward, and so I've grown to enjoy this single package a lot more, just for those reasons. Does that make sense? No, maybe. Maybe.
It does.
Okay. This, by the way, is if you were using this in multiple locations, we just did this to show it. If you were using something similar to like get it, symptom service.2 is it. And that's how it finds the one instance of symptom service, period. So then by the time we had built through the sandbox, and I guess I'll just go back over to master. Now we had something that, we had those screens, we had a basic, that basic service. We added one for Firebase, which kind of had built from something previous. Here, let me get over to, there was really two of them. One was a stream for this hello world, which if you look at the Firebase connection, this single text widget, come on, see Flutter, is updated on all of these screens that we had here and here. And this is essentially just a, here's the screen. The screen is stateless. This whole app is made of stateless widgets and shared stuff. We have that tab controller with the sandbox, Firebase, and FHIR, FHIR. And this is a stream to Firebase. And then these are also streams to Firebase. So if I changed your glucose from 750, which is way too high, back to 102, sure, you'll see it update in real time. And this kind of had built from, honestly, I just used some of the work that I had done previously for another lecture and adapted it to this. And then this is the last thing that we did, which we didn't show it in, we didn't make it in the 4 hours that we were working together. But what we did was we showed it as a feature and something that you can do within Flutter. Because as I introduced FHIR at the start, a lot of people in healthcare, if you are making an application in health, you really need it to connect to FHIR. And one of our six presenters has been working very heavily on getting releases 2, 3, and 4 connected as a data model, so that now we can use in a Flutter application, which is really, really, really cool and a whole lot of work. And so this was kind of showing some of the stuff that he had done. And so each of these are FHIR servers. AidBox is one of them, and Happy is another one. Or you can make a free, in quotes, healthcare server. And you click on this, it'll run this is AidBox. So it'll go to my manager, FHIR manager. Within the FHIR manager, I've got AidBox service and the Happy service. So within this one, it's going to run essentially it's a future where it'll await this data. It calls that from this AidBox service, and it parses all this data down, and it gets me vital signs. And what, like 106/78 is your blood pressure. This is another blood pressure, respiratory rate and pulse, or what those are. But we just parsed those down so that you could actually have something. And then the final thing we had was QC Flutter. I'm going to, let's go back over to this FHIR thing. Here's my happy FHIR calls. My text controller is also in this FHIR manager, so I literally need no state in this screen, which is really helpful. I'm going to create something called QC Flutter. That's going to be a fake patient on this FHIR database. When I press this button, it takes the data that is in these two controllers, my last name and first name text editing controllers. I'm not a big fan of doing the is busy thing, but it made the most sense at the time. And it will create this on calling this happy service create patient right there. So if I click this button, it's going to give me a more typical looking snack bar that you're more used to and say, success, we made QC Flutter. And then when I click search, it's actually going to load the JSON FHIR call from happyfhir.org. And so there it is, QC Flutter. I could probably search for that over here too and find the same, since I've already created that on their server. See if it works. See if I remember how to zoom in with Android and with iOS emulators at the same time. Oh my God. Yeah. Let's see if this is the same resource ID. 11699939. Yeah, same one. Yeah. So we just made a fake patient right now on this app that gives you everything into JSON. So I think that's the majority of what we did in 4 hours, just kind of giving the overview. I loved the live share thing. I think that was really, really cool. I think separating out into branches was really helpful for us. And I think that just being very selective in the things that we used, like we used this Flutter icons package. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's got over 5,000 icons as a single package, so that you can just, if you're deciding that you wanted to use a, let's just do, okay, so we had a lot of FHIR puns, so let's just search for FHIR just to keep that motif. See if this GitHub thing will load. All right, so you can make a dumpster fire or Firefox, or you can do a bonfire, which is the one that we picked for this one. And you can find, do you want one that's from Font Awesome, or do you want something from Material Community? And then you can immediately put this into your application. So that was how we did that. That's why we got our poop emoji. And I got a poop emoji in a medical conference live coding session, which is pretty cool.
That's a success right there.
Yes, of course. But yeah, we mostly just use those two packages, Flutter icons and Git. And I think we got a lot of cool stuff done in our time. Thoughts?
Yeah, that was awesome. That's a really cool.
Yeah, really
package.
impressive.
Yeah, I'll have to check out this Get package a little bit more.
Yeah, check it out. I think, and Ryan, I feel free to weigh in. I think the biggest concern is that we don't have much in terms of testing with this package, at least right now. And this package has been updated a lot, even from when we first picked it. Oh, geez, it's gotten 260 likes since then. But I think there is, like when we first found it was like 2.0 or 2. something. It was like early May, and there weren't stream builders.
They made 2 updates yesterday.
Yeah, this dude, he's doing a lot. He's doing a lot.
He does a release every time too.
Yeah, whatever, that's fine. But his it's well documented, at least in this part, And the stream management that he had, like for this, he didn't have this 2 weeks ago. And so like it'll be interesting to see what comes of this, but if you can give me something that makes it so that I don't have to have 15 different packages, that allows me to not have to pass context over and over and over again, and allows me to write stuff more succinctly, that's fine. I will do that, and then we'll try and build from there. So yeah, this was really, really helpful for us.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting package. I've kind of watched them since their inception.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that they had no code coverage until maybe like 2 weeks ago, which that's probably the biggest. I'd have a hard time recommending anything to be used in a production app with no code coverage. Any open source project, there's just no guaranteeing that he won't break something down the line, and there's no way of verifying that without people opening up bugs against, basically you are the beta tester, or you are the alpha tester. When it breaks for you is when he'll know that there's something wrong, which is never really a good place to be in.
Agree. Use at your own risk. Use at your own risk.
Yeah.
But
Well,
other
I
than
just
that, I mean, I like that. I don't really like the use of globals to manage everything, but I get like it's not as easy as it could be. So I understand it.
Yeah, and honestly, and I picked this up from using stuff with Git where we have the extract, where we have this, where each of your different screens, you've got this screen, this one, and that way, if I am in the actual screen itself, I'm just looking there. It's not really global, it doesn't have each of the, the three smaller sections that are here, and here. It only has that one screen, but what it means is if I set up a new action that lets me get to a new, instead of dashboard, it goes to check-in screen, I don't have to redo my packages over and over and over again. And that's, it's not that big of a pain, but if you get to where you don't have to do it, and then you have to do it again, you just get really annoyed about it. And so I think some of that, the benefit of the global, and you make arguments either way, but some of the benefits of using a service locator or using something else, we're just not having to pass those in over and over again. It's a similar argument to making a folder that is named the same, or a Dart file that exports something that is the same name as your folder, so that you literally, for, as an example, the shared stuff, you just have shared once. You don't have to re-import the app bar Dart file or the action button Dart file. So I think the convenience aspect and for at least for the stuff that I've done, which is not nearly on the scale of full production. It's on a much smaller scale. And often is also in the time of teaching to people that are less are relatively new to Flutter. I find it is really helpful, but use at your own risk.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Is that like as developers, we should be using the things that we feel make us productive. So like if you like this library, or if you play around with it and you see it fits your needs, then obviously, use it. Test coverage is not, I mean, any one of us can go on there and write unit tests for this library.
Yeah.
It's not doing anything too crazy. So that's a great opportunity for if anybody sees this and is like, hey, I want to add some, 50% test coverage is better than 0 test coverage. So if somebody just wants to go on there and, contribute on their own spare time, like, that obviously makes this thing better.
Yeah, somebody will do it.
And speaking of which, random plug for Gray, who was also one of our people. If anybody wants to help us with FHIR things, man, oh gosh, you have no idea how much we would enjoy that assistance. Because you think about the JSON that is required for specifically Flutter. I'm sorry, let me rephrase. To connect a app into healthcare, this is the glue that connects it into healthcare. And that's huge. And so, we're using Freezed and we're trying to do our best, at least in the way that we're setting this up. But yes, write some unit tests for Git and help us turn this into an actual package that you can harness on pub.dev. And we could do a lot of really cool stuff with this. So,
Hey, John, I have a few questions on
Yeah.
that. Okay, so in your nav bar or bottom navigation bar, if you have multiple views for a single tab, so what would be your suggestion? Use a page controller to manage the state within each tab?
so I will show you. So I've named them where if it's dot screen, it's going to be seen in this thing, and that's it. But if there's multiple, so for example, in this bottom navigation bar, that's on this one, the FHIR screen, 1, 2, 3. Each of these is its own separate file within Dart. And all that FHIR.screen does is it searches, it just manages those 3 screens and this stream at the very top. So
Are those all coming from Firebase?
this is from Firebase. This is locally run in the sandbox. So this is just a locally run list view so that people could actually make those changes and hit save. And then this is to Firebase, and these call async calls to 2 separate FHIR service, a box and a happy. But the way that they're managed is I am from the build method, I do the default tab controller before the scaffold. It's already set to 3 because there's only going to be those 3. And then within the bottom nav bar is when I have a tab bar with these 3 tabs. And then on the various, where's it at? Tab, tab, and tab. And then where was my...
on press, okay.
Is it on pressed? Apologize. Oh, here it is. Okay, here it is under build body. You have to have the tab bar view with those three views. And so it actually will, you don't have to make, it doesn't have to be a stateful widget. And you can do this if you were doing a page view, you'd want a page controller, and the page controller would have to manage the on tap as to which one you actually do. But if you're using the default tab controller and you set your length and you set your tab bars and you set your tab bar view, it'll figure it out itself. So does that make sense?
Yeah, so each one can be a separate page view controller, right? Each one can be a page view controller. Each tab can manage its own page view. Okay.
Yeah. You can do this in many different ways. In a prior app that I'd worked on, we had things that were, the view was managed by a view model. And so the view model was managing all of it managed the page view controller. That allowed you to switch to the other pages. And the benefit of that as well was you could have something that was a page view that had a dynamic number of tabs or pages or whatever.
Okay.
So, in this way, just make it a service, or, if you do a block, put everything into the same block. Just as long as you to somewhat extract out your view from your data, or how the data are managed, is kind of helpful. But for tab bars, all you have to do is you need the tab bar view, you need the tab bar, and you can put it on the top or the bottom if you want to. And you need above those 2 in the hierarchy, the tab controller with a length. That's it.
Okay, fantastic. Good. So in case of that, where we have the multiple pages, and then since the Android supports hardware back button option, so does Flutter do automatically the hardware management, or do you have to have separate ones, especially you have the routes and all that stuff?
Yeah, so when I press back, when I'm here, it's not going to go back to the other page. It will just go to, it will go back, because if you think about it, my route, the way I have my routing, I'm not doing a new route when I go from this page to this one. I'm not messing with that at all, because it's, as far as this application is concerned, the route is to this FHIR.screen, and that's it. But you can do that. You can definitely set up routing, and you can do that with there's other packages that you can do that will make your life easier with routing. And then there's, let me see if I can show you this. You can also set up where you have like, especially if you're working your way towards web, where you have dynamic link names, which are really helpful. And this one, what I think they had mentioned this with a prior navigator. So, it looks like they're trying to put this on the inside or with a different. There was one that was called like router. I think it's
Okay.
router or something like that, or modular maybe. Yeah, I think it was this one. Yeah, where you can actually set up routes within routes, and that's also kind of helpful for this too. But I wouldn't, use whatever package you think is helpful for you. That one was interesting to see. I don't know what's changed on this since I haven't messed around with navigation in this package, and we've mostly been working on this to try and be ready for yesterday's talk.
Okay, fantastic, man. That's good. Very good.
Yeah.
Hey, unrelated, I can ask a few more questions.
Sure.
Okay. So, I mean, on the iOS side, we have these images, the 2x, 3x kind of stuff. However, with the newer versions, we have this SVG form and the PDF one. So it will automatically do the image based on the resolution available for the device. How that works within Flutter? I mean, do you have to give 3 different resolution images? Especially, for example, even the tab bar icons. If I have my own personal icons that I cannot find that anywhere in those font Flutter icons package.
Mm-hmm.
If I have to add it myself, what would be your recommendation? Do I have to do 3 different resolution images or one SVG and then?
There's and if any of you have another easier way, you can import a package to automatically bring in SVGs.
Oh, okay.
That's
so
what
then
I
it
would
will
probably do. And you just put the SVG in your asset.
Okay.
And you import this package. You make sure that you've called the correct thing in pubspec.yaml, so you have the correct assets, and then you just call it this way. That's probably what I would do if you have the SVG.
Okay. So what was it called? Flutter SVG?
Yeah, Flutter SVG.
Yeah, your mileage also might vary with that package as well. We actually got rid of it because there were some breaking changes with the latest beta. And then also, like, depending on your SVG, it just doesn't always render correctly.
Yeah.
So like your best bet is to always just use PNGs or JPEGs. But if you feel like if you need an SVG, like you absolutely need an SVG, then this is your second best bet.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but Ryan, in that case, if you have a PNG, then you need to have 3 different resolutions, right? Of course, we don't need for the one. So we need at least
Yep,
twice.
exactly. You would need to have multiple resolutions. And there's a little bit of documentation on the Flutter website about this, but there's not like a lot in terms, like it'd be nice if they had a widget that you could basically pass in a convention and pass in your PNG's name, and it would know to grab the different resolutions depending on
That's correct. Yeah.
depending on the
Yeah.
situation.
I mean, I
But
ran into the same.
I don't think they're there yet.
Yeah, I ran into the same confusion because I was looking at their documentation. They say I need to separately create a 2 and a 3, and then I do not know how that will work for Android. I do not know. Do we have a separate thing for Android, or Android will automatically take care of it if I have one?
It's the same thing for Android.
Okay.
If you're talking, yeah, it's the same thing. If you're handling your images in Flutter, then it's the same thing. If you're handling them as like assets in the native layer, then it's different, but it's the same pattern.
Oh, okay.
I do know that there are ways that you can do this for the launcher icon, where you can actually use a package that will automatically create the various icon sizes. And you use build runner for this. So you put it in your dev dependencies, and then you do this. If you haven't run these over and over and over again, where you're doing Flutter pub run, blah, blah, whatever, then more power to you. When we were working on the FHIR package, Grays decided that build runner is the new compile time you know, if you've ever seen that XKCD comic.
Okay.
Because
I think it might actually be built into like the Flutter CLI now, but I haven't tried to run it. Somebody had mentioned that to me on Twitter,
yeah,
like at the end of last year, and I just never got around to running it. So maybe it's in there now. I don't know.
maybe. I love this comic. It's in pretty much all of the lectures I've given for Flutter. Yeah, but him running build runner for that package that he's doing for FHIR, one run would take him 10 minutes. It's crazy.
So what would be your go-to one for JSON management in your app?
JSON serializable and freezed.
Yeah. Freezed, okay.
So JSON serializable is really, 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 really useful because it takes away a lot of the
Boilerplate code.
And it also works really well with freezed, which is from, and I'm blanking on his name, but the same guy who made Provider, Remy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so with freezed, what you're able to do is, and the way you put them together is, and I have that in this version of the master with the data model that's here, right here. I typed in, and actually I've set up snippets too, by the way, for like a class within freeze. So if I call this QC Flutter, it'll automatically give me all the things that I need to. And then in here, I would just type in essentially what they are. That's it. That's all I have to do. Integers, doubles, blah, blah, whatever. If I needed the JSON, like the key to make it like required, you could just do @required. If you wanted there to be a default value, you could do that as well. And then it's got a factory method of from JSON. And then you just run build runner in a terminal.
Okay.
With this. And that's it. It'll create the file for whatever model.freezed and whatever model.g. The .g is from JSON serializable.
Oh, fantastic. Okay,
yeah.
Great.
Yeah, that's what I would suggest. And I'm happy to share the snippets that I created for this because it makes it really simple if you're doing this for a lot of stuff. Like, for example, a FHIR package, FHIR package. But if you're like making a whole freezed, like a file from scratch, I can just make that whole thing and it will just, here, let me just show you this. I'm going to make a new file that's called QC Flutter.model.dart.
Okay.
And then I just use my freezed file snippets and QC Flutter. And then in here, I just put in whatever I want there to be. And you know, so you just do this for everybody that's in here, you know, and whatever. And then if I just run that
Flutter program builder. Yep.
It'll and you can do the delete conflicting outputs too.
Yep.
And then it's just going to automatically create the .freezed and the .g. And so now I literally have to do nothing else.
Okay,
super
awesome.
Useful.
Okay.
Other questions?
Okay. Hey, I'm coming from Swift world. So in Swift, for the extension, I can create my own methods and add other things. Can we do the same thing on the enums for the Flutter as well?
You can do extension methods. You can add things to like string, or you can add things to whatever you want. I'm not sure about the best way to consider enums as compared to from
Yeah,
the
so
world.
for enums, the support isn't that great. You can add extensions to specific enums, but you can't say over add extensions to generic. Like there's no such thing as a generic enum extension.
Okay.
There's some outstanding language requests, including that and some other nice to have features, but it's just not there yet. A lot of people will use like a secondary library, or they'll use, like in our case, we define like an enum object that is just a generic type of object, and we allow it to be able to specify like values and things like that. So it's not, not ideal, but it's the best you can do right now.
Okay. Okay. And then, so I see that you use Visual Studio. So is there any disadvantage of using Android Studio, or is it it's just a personal comfort?
Pick your poison. Each person has
Yeah,
their own style.
they each have their own advantages in terms of like the dev tools. Like there's some dev tool experiences that are offered in Android Studio that aren't offered in Visual Studio Code. And one example would be like if you wanted to see the networking traffic, that's not you're not capable of doing that in Visual Studio Code yet. Now that goes away because I think in the most recent version of Dart
Yep.
DevTools, you
Thank.
can see the networking traffic. So really like Dart DevTools is becoming like the thing, like the best experience out of all three. But there, it's just like John said. There's just trade-offs. Some things Visual Studio Code is better for. Some things Android Studio is better for.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're only doing dev in one language, just pick whichever one you like. Or if you're using just Flutter or Dart and Kotlin, then great. I had started like when I did stuff in Java and into Kotlin, I'd use Android Studio, and I love IntelliJ. I love the software they make. And when I had switched into Flutter, the people that were like, I was watching the videos and all the instructional stuff was in VS Code, and it took me forever to get the keyboard shortcuts down. But when I got that, and when I found the right extensions that would work for me, I preferred it. So
Okay.
What
I felt.
Yeah, if you're doing more native stuff, then it probably makes more sense for you to live in Android Studio. But like John said, if you're mostly living in Flutterland and Dartland, then Visual Studio is probably all you need.
Yeah.
Like I maybe open up Android Studio once every like 3 or 4 months to do something. For the most part,
Okay.
I just live in Flutter.
AeroLens is super cool, by the way, if you don't have this extension. I know Ryan's got that. I've seen that on your share.
Okay.
That's
Awesome.
Really good.
Okay. Cool, man. Very good.
It made our data model. So all this stuff that I did not have to type in, and all this stuff that I did not have to type in.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool, man.
Super useful. And all I typed in was this, and then just whatever variables that I wanted. That's it. That's all I had to type.
Okay. I mean, based on your experience, I think, have you ever had the need for you to jump onto either to Swift or Objective-C or Java to create a separate one which is not supported in Flutter yet?
I have not. I'm probably not the person you should ask, though.
Okay.
In that, this is pretty much what you're seeing is it's always moving forward, and if it doesn't work in Flutter, then I'll wait until it's available before I start pushing something.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, most of the things that I've had to jump into app code or into Xcode or into Android Studio for have been like breaking releases, build sort of things like updating Android X or the latest version of Xcode broke Flutter working in the simulator, so you had to do some stuff to upgrade your iOS project. Stuff like that. So if you want to do something advanced, like, I don't know, say video editing, the example I mentioned before, then you'll probably have to build a native plugin for something like that. But for the most part, everything that I've needed to build, there's already something out there. There's either a plugin out there or Flutter supports it out of the box.
Exception FHIR. Come on, guys, help me. FHIR. By the way, Carl, this would probably may be useful for you for your project with parsing JSON in the background. It talks about separating it out into its own isolate with compute. I don't know if you had that in yours, but if it's trying to load multiple images, that might be helpful.
Oh, okay.
And that's just from the Flutter cookbook.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you,
I was just gonna say I've been this last week or so digging into Dart, just to learn Dart better. I found that interesting. There's the docs on dart.dev are really good. I think they're real helpful. And then there's a Dart by example site. I can drop a link to it. It's pretty slick.
The addition of the spread operators are super, super, super useful. And that's in the last year. And this has made working with lists so much easier.
Yeah, I noticed you're using those.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's definitely worth, like, if you're coming to Dart fresh, I think it's, especially from other languages, it's worth understanding, because like that same class that I shared today in the Flutter channel and Charlotte Dev Slack, I basically shared it internally, and it was great, like, to see PHP developers come back, and I had somebody say, you know, they're like, you need to set up getters for everything. I'm like, no, I don't.
Nope.
And I'm like, and then I realized how gross that is in PHP. I was like, that shouldn't be that way anyway.
When we've given our lectures, I love showing that this is all of Dart. That's it.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Cool.
I mean, there's definitely room for improvement. Like, I've heard, you know, input from people that have gone in deep on things, but like, it just seems like they're trying to keep things simple and usable, and putting the right, trying to make that call to what works magically, making the calls on what makes sense to make work. I don't know how to say it, but there's a lot of magic stuff that goes on with Dart, and I think that's a fine line to decide when it makes sense and when it doesn't. But you know, I'm appreciating some of the things I'm learning that it does like that. Not everybody probably will, but it's just it is preference there.
I think it'll be interesting to see, because right now all their effort is into nullability and making the type system more sound. So, like, it'll really be interesting to see where they go once they've actually done that, because that kind of opens the doors for a lot of really nice language features, a lot of really nice sort of functional language features that can make building UIs significantly better than what they are today.
Agree. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And
that makes sense.
That honestly, I messed around with Flutter for web, and after our last, actually it was after our last QC Flutter meetup, it gave me a bit of a spark, and I would say that the way that Flutter is currently set up in the way that it's done its mobile first design, where you're clicking, where you're imagining that you're moving something around, be it with your thumb or with two fingers, where you're pinching to zoom, or like all that other stuff. That is really where it's excelled, and in the UIs right now. And as you start putting in these other inputs, and as you start expanding beyond mobile, and it's still in beta. But it's interesting to see how how much progress has been since last year until now. Partha, we'll invite you. I'll send you the link here
Okay.
in just a second, unless somebody else has it handy. But yeah, it's been an interesting experience. It's also really fun to go to these conferences and make their own, and to make their lecture or whatever, or make somebody's what's the word I'm looking for? Make somebody's conference application in the middle of the conference. It's a lot of fun.
So is this Byte conference going to be virtual as well?
Yeah, ByteConf it's an all virtual, all free conference. So it was kind of like, I'm sure that people were doing virtual conferences before, but as far as I know, it was like the first tech, like sort of free all day virtual conference, the one in 2018.
Okay.
It's BYTE.
Yeah, BYTE.
Cool.